everyone, and welcome to the Lord Gord Podcast. This is your host, Lord Gord. I'm giving you information that's factually correct and politically incorrect. And the closer I get to you, the more you've made me see. By giving me all you've got, your love has captured me. Listeners, unfortunately, I'm so busy throughout the week. I said I was going to have a podcast about 2 weeks ago. I'm finally doing it now, and I'm calling it right now. This is going to be my second to last podcast for a while. I'm going to put the pod, unfortunately, on a hiatus. I'm just working 60 hours a week, and I don't have the time that I want to dedicate to the podcast at this moment. I do want to work on some new music. I don't know when that's going to come out, if it's ever going to come out. But I just want to let you guys know, those that have been here for the ride from the beginning, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully I've changed your mind, or if you're already on my side of the argument, that you've strengthened your arguments and you've been able to convince others of the truth. So let's get into it. I got a song I'm going to sing for you guys next week, but let's get into it. So this week's podcast is about Islam, the Tripoli pirates, and a young United States of America. Here we go. There are many claims by those on the left that the Middle East is in disarray only because of the Western world. They claim that the attitudes of the Muslims and their governments have no basis in Islam or the Quran, but are due to poverty and oppression. This is flatly wrong. Lack of religious freedom, freedom of speech, equal rights under the law, and many other freedoms protected in many parts of the Western world have nothing to do with foreign policy or any other leftist buzzwords. It is the doctrine of Islam itself that limits such freedoms and only allows select behaviors permitted by the Quran. When it comes to slavery, Arab Muslims enslaved Africans to an extent far greater than that of the Western world, and for hundreds of years prior to the transatlantic slave trade. North African Muslims enslaved at least 1 million Europeans from 1500 to 1800. Algerians were estimated to have captured about 350 British ships between 1672 and 1682. North African Muslims would even capture American merchant ships and enslave those that were aboard. The treatment of American merchants will lead America into one of its first wars. The reason for Muslim hostility towards American, British, and other non-Muslim merchants was that the Quran permitted it. So before we get started into the juicy details, I'm going to read you guys a great quote, just give me a second, from Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville. I pointed this out in another podcast, can't remember which one, but before we go in, quote, page 532, Democracy in America. Quote, Muhammad professed to derive from heaven, and he has inserted in the Quran not only a body of religious doctrines, but political maxims, civil and criminal laws, and theories of science. The gospel, on the contrary, only speaks of the general relations of men to God and to each other, beyond which it inculcates and imposes no point of faith. This alone, besides 1,000 other reasons, would suffice to prove that the former of these religions will never long predominate in a cultivated and democratic age, while the latter is destined to retain its sway at these and all other periods. Close quote. So let's get into it. A lot of my sourcing comes from Brian Kilmeade's book, Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates. Great book. I encourage you to read it. Let's get into it. The beginnings of the conflict. In July 1765, Captain Richard O'Brien was approached by a North African pirate ship in the Mediterranean. The Algerian pirates outnumbered the Americans, captured them, and paraded them through Algiers. They were enslaved, and there are only 3 ways out of slavery. 1, convert to Islam. 2, receive a ransom. Or 3, attempt to escape. All right? The four nations of Tripoli, Algiers, Morocco, and Tunis were part of the Turkish Muslim Ottoman Empire and were along the North African coast, and they preyed on various religious European merchant ships in the Mediterranean for hundreds of years. France and England chose to pay a tithe to them instead of fighting back. Hey, even today they cuck. I mean, Europe. Read The Strange Death of Europe, Immigration, Identity, and Islam by Doug Murray. It's not pretty over in France or England. Muslim aggression. They're outbreeding the native population. They're imposing their values. There's certain areas that you can't go into. They follow Sharia law. You know, acid attacks, rape gangs, grooming gangs, pedophile gangs. A lot of them don't work. A good amount don't work. They live off the government. And they're becoming a larger and larger political constituency. That's a huge problem. And hopefully we can avoid it here. I mean, but with the election of people like Ilhan Omar and Rashid Tlaib, which I'm going to get to later, we got to fight that now. We don't want what has happened to places like Germany to happen here. But let's keep going. The price tag to deter Muslim aggression was too great for a young United States. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had a conversation with the ambassador of Tripoli. John Adams was frustrated with the ambassador and asked how the Barbary states could wage war on Western nations without provocation. The ambassador's response was, quote, "All nations which had not acknowledged the prophet were sinners, whom it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave." Close quote. What did Alexis de Tocqueville say earlier? This is dictated in their religious holy book. So the closer you adhere to that book, the more in line with their behavior you're going to be in the Prophet Muhammad, who was a warlord. So let's keep going. America realized that war was the only answer. The young United States realized that they couldn't pay the fee, and if they did, it would only justify Muslim aggression, as whatever you subsidize, you get more of. Whatever you tax, you get less of. You pay the bully to leave you alone. It shows that bullying people gets him paid. He's going to keep bullying. The only way to get rid of a bully was to give them taste of their own medicine. So Thomas Jefferson devised a plan to free the Americans and end the enslavement of Americans in the Barbary states. The USS Washington was sent with a tribute to Algiers, and they broke the established treaty. So I believe this is when the Navy was formed, and there was huge disagreements about forming a Navy because it cost so much money. I mean, imagine Congress arguing about the fact that they're spending too much money. But I digress. The Americans were made into slaves and had to transport not only the Algerian ambassador, but hundreds of African slaves, animals, and attendants to Constantinople. Afterwards, Tom Jefferson prepared 4 warships to be sent to war. One of the American ships, called Enterprise, flew a British flag to fool the Tripolitans and trounced them. The Vixen and the Philadelphia were sent to aid American ships, crush pirates at sea, and to block the port of Tripoli. The Philadelphia crashed into rocks and was attacked by Tripolitan ships. The men were captured and enslaved. The Philadelphia was then converted into a Tripolitan warship. A great embarrassment. A deal was struck with the exiled rightful Bashaw of Tripoli. The Americans struck a deal with him that would grant him his rightful position in exchange for freeing American slaves and permanent peace with the United States. So the reinforcements, the American reinforcements, in the Intrepid slashed the Tripolitans on the former American ship, the Philadelphia, and destroyed it. Stephen Decatur, a young lieutenant, led that raid and helped lead another American victory in Tripoli. William Eaton had led 400 men, including 10 Americans, the exiled Bashaw of Tripoli, and hired mercenaries from Alexandria, Egypt, to Dern, Tripoli. They went to ambush the Tripolitans, and their attack was successful. Tobias Lear, the leader of the USS Constitution, offered a deal to the acting Bashaw of Tripoli, not knowing about Bill Eaton's deal that would restore the exiled Bashaw to his rightful position. The acting Bashaw accepted Tobias's offer, and the treaty was established in September 1805, and the Americans instead gave the exiled Bashaw $200 a month, which was real money in those days, along with freeing his wife and children. Tobias Lear ended up shooting himself in the head in 1816. So the moral of the story here, I mean, there's tons more details in the book. I just can't delve into them here. The moral of the story is, it wasn't foreign policy or Western imperialism that started this war. It was the fact that Muslim pirates from North Africa were kidnapping and enslaving white Christians from England, France, the United States, so on and so forth. And they were bullying people. And America had it because they were young. They didn't have any money. And what the leader of Tripoli wanted, what they wanted was an extraordinary amount of money. And if they kept paying it, there'd be no way they can keep coming up with this money. And it was hurting American business because these merchant ships weren't sailing. And if they were sailing, they had to pay extraordinary amounts of fees in order to sail. So us Americans did what we had to do. We punched those clowns in the mouth. We made them understand, listen, we're a young country. We're not going to take your crap. We're not going to allow our people to be enslaved by you barbarians. And that's what happened. And this is what's happened in the history of Islam all around the world since its inception about 1,400 years ago. And wherever you see this ideology have a strong foothold, you will see those kinds of things. You will see absence of free speech, non-equal rights under the law. Women will have to wear the bags, so on and so forth. I mean, I'm very concerned that you have people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib in Congress, and these people hate America. They aren't American. They don't value our Constitution. They don't value our way of life. They're dedicated to the Quran and its teachings. You know, I'm sure if you ask them, they would say they're Muslim first and American second. No, you have to be American first. Because, as we're seeing in England, France, so on and so forth, Germany, in the Muslim areas with a strong foothold, you're seeing Sharia law. You're seeing increase in rapes, violence. They're becoming a large political constituency, and they're going to vote in Sharia law because that's what they believe. That's what they practice. You know, I believe over half of Muslims in Britain believe that homosexuality should be a crime. You know, talking about LGBT. In most Muslim countries, you know, being homosexual is a crime. That's illegal. And in other countries, you're actually killed for being homosexual. I believe I was speaking about in a couple of podcasts ago that almost half of all hate crimes in France are committed against Jews, even though Jews are a small percentage of the population, and a large percentage of the people being aggressive towards the Jews are the Muslims. So tell your friends about the Tripoli War. Let them know, hey, it's not all America's fault. You know, you can go to places like Thailand. You can even go to places like the Philippines where they have a small clustered Muslim population. They give problems over there. When you look at Egypt, I mean, Egypt is been taken over by Islam, and you know the Coptic Christians are basically being exterminated. Lebanon's another example. You know, wherever you see a large amount of Muslims, you will not see equal rights. You will not see free speech. You will not see free markets. Shoot, more books are translated in Spanish a year than books are translated in Arabic for like the past 1,000 years. All right? It's not all America. It's really what they believe. Ideas have consequences. When people believe this stuff, which a lot of them do, when they believe that, you know, if you cherry pick the Quran, you deserve to die. When they believe things like, you know, a woman's testimony is only worth, what, a third of a man's testimony or something like that. When you believe that when people leave the religion, they should be killed. When you believe that blasphemy is publicly criticized in the religion. When you believe that if people draw the Prophet Muhammad, those people deserve to die. That is a problem. That is not a problem that we caused. That is a problem in the ideology that they espouse and believe in, and I do not want that ideology anywhere near me. And if a large amount of people believe that ideology to a certain extent, it will cause problems in the society because those values are not compatible with the values of free democratic nations. That's the Lord Gord Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe on iTunes. Subscribe on YouTube. Get the Lord Gord Funk album, This Isn't TV. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. Next week is going to be the final podcast in a while. I'm going to be talking about why I do not date career women. I don't do it. I don't want women that have masculine goals. I want women that want to raise the babies and stay at home. I don't want some woman with a quote-unquote career. because that means she doesn't have time for me. It means she's bought into the lies of feminism, gender communism, big government, sexual liberation, all these ideas that have destroyed communities, and it is destroying the society right now. So stay tuned for that. I'm Lord Gord. I'll talk to you next time.